around 40 years in age, and what would you like to see yourself at that time? How do you want to see yourself 20 years from now? I think that is one of the most important questions that you have to ask yourself and think upon it. And once you think upon it, then you'll know what your life goal is. So let me give you some examples. Some people think that after 20 years they want to be rich, they want to have a lot of money. And that is a very valid, that is a very practical life goal, pretty understandable. And yes, that is pretty a practical goal. I mean, people want to get rich, people want to make money, understandable, pretty good. Other people want knowledge. So some people might want knowledge, and that's pretty good too. That's a life goal. Some people might want to disseminate their knowledge, to spread their knowledge. That is a life goal. Some people might just want to have a very good family, have a very good living standard. That is another life goal. So all of these things, once you see yourself in the future, I think that would be a good way to know what you want to achieve in life and what you want. So once you start to see what you want to see yourself, you have to list down those things, and ultimately what you would like to do is you want to make all of those things happen. And the first step in making those things happen is actually knowing what those things are. So, like I said, like I mentioned, you can write down you want to get rich. You can write down you want to get a lot of knowledge. You want to spread that knowledge, maybe, or maybe you want to have a, maybe you're a family-oriented person and you want to have a very good family, or you want to live someplace other than Pakistan, or you want to immigrate somewhere. All of those goals are perfectly fine and are very personal to you. And obviously, the best answer of these goals lies within you.
Right.
Okay. So, another very important question is, where do you want to live your life? So, the first thing you have to ask yourself about your career is, do you want to stay in Pakistan or do you want to move abroad? Okay. So, both of these decisions are, as I said, they are personal choices, and whatever you opt, either you want to live in Pakistan or want to move abroad, both are your personal decisions, and I think uh, this is for you to decide, and whatever you decide, you have to uh, follow it. And then you have to see what is your motivation behind this decision of either staying in Pakistan or moving abroad. Or next thing is, do you want to immigrate permanently or would you like to shift temporarily? Again, for you to decide if you want either of these two. Okay, so next thing is, can you leave your family behind and live alone? This is another one of the most important things that comes with moving abroad. Uh, I do agree that there could be some exceptional cases where you could take your family along with you if you have some history of immigration already before, but that is not applicable to the wide majority of people. Okay, so this is something that a lot of individuals have to face, that can they leave their family behind and live alone in a new country, in a different kind of environment with different cultural norms and values. And so if they want to move abroad or want to study abroad, then this is something um, that you have to prepare for. And I see, I know that this question is very personal, and there could be many reasons why you would not want to leave your family behind. I mean, it's not just because of homesickness. It could be because, let's say, let's say you could be the sole breadwinner of your family, right? So that is one of the major factors that you have to think over and assess your conditions, assess your family conditions, your personal relations, and how they can align with your decision of either staying in Pakistan or moving abroad. Okay, so the next thing is, what are your future family goals and how can these plans align with your decision? Again, a very personal question that you have to ask yourself. And whatever those goals are, whatever your relationships are, you have to align those with your decision. You cannot you cannot plan for something and ignore the other, because all of this is a part of life and you have to prepare for these things. So I think these points are very important, and after you've gone over these points, you are now prepared to uh, see what uh, higher education holds for you. Okay, so in order to make this webinar a little bit more interactive, I would like any member from the audience to tell me what each flag is and what country does each flag belong to. So, any member from the audience, please. So, starting with the first one, the top left one. I'm sure most of us must know that.
You can unmute your mic.
Yes, please.
Participant. Okay. While
Assalamualaikum.
anyone wants to participate?
Walaikum salam. Yes,
Yes, sir. First one flag is US, and the second one
yes,
is Australia. Third one is
right,
Japan.
right.
Fourth one is Germany, and then Canada, South Korea,
Mm-hmm.
United Kingdom, China,
Yes,
and
and the European Union, right. Great. Good job. Okay. So, right now we'll be discussing a little bit about how to select your target country. There are a lot of factors that go into this decision, and I have just listed a few of the most important factors according to me. And so I'll be sharing those factors that go into this decision. The first is the cost of education, the quality of education in your field, the job opportunities, the return of investment, the PR or immigration, if that's a factor for you, and lastly, the personal preference. Okay, so I'll just briefly discuss all of these factors of the mentioned countries. Okay, so first, you're talking about the US. Cost of education in the US is extremely high. We'll be talking in the next slide about funding opportunities, but in general, cost of studying graduate studies in US or even undergraduate studies is extremely high. On the other hand, the quality of education in the US is also extremely high, and the research outcomes are also very good. Again, the job opportunities in the US are very high, and as you might know, the US is called the land of opportunities. And then again, the return of investment. When I talk about the return of investment, uh, I, I I'm talking about financial investment. How much you invest in your graduate studies, and after that, how much can you recover on that investment? So ROI in the US is also pretty good. Uh, PR immigration, I would say, for those of you who might not know, PR is permanent residency that leads to immigration. So PR and immigration is not very easy in the US, and it might take many years, if at all, you can make it possible. Um, we'll talk about personal preference in the end. Okay, so next is Australia. Australia, again, cost of education is high, not so much as the US, but still pretty high. Quality education in your field, again, it depends on your field, but with regards to electrical engineering, yes, the quality is pretty high. Job opportunities are not very much as compared to the US, but still I would rate it at around 50% to that of the US. So job opportunities are not that much in Australia as compared to the US. Return of investment is also pretty good in Australia, and PR immigration is easier than the US, but I mean, it's not like a walk in the park, but still, it is relatively easy. Okay, so next is Japan. Japan has a lot of scholarships, so cost of education would be less, and quality of education would be high, especially if you're going towards the robotics and AI field. Job opportunities in Japan are good, and ROI is not as good as Australia or the US. PR immigration is not very easy, but you can still manage it. Next is Germany. So, cost of education in Germany, as you might know, is very less. Actually, in a lot of universities, there is zero tuition fee, and all you have to manage is your living expenses. And quality education, it is very high, comparable to that in the US. And job opportunities are also pretty good. I would say not as much as the US, but better than better than Australia and Japan. ROI is also pretty good because you get a salary package in euros. And PR immigration is relatively easy in Germany because after you graduate, you get a job search visa, and then after living for a certain number of years, you can apply for the PR, and you'll get you. Most people get it, and there is a big Pakistani student community in Germany. Okay, next is Canada. Cost of education in Canada is also very high, comparable to the US. Quality education, uh, yes, there is quality education, not as high as the US, but still pretty good. Job opportunities are, I would say, less than the US, and normally not very ample job opportunities. So I would rate it comparable to Australia. And return of investment, if you get a job, then the ROI is good here. PR immigration is easy as compared to the US, and uh, comparable to Australia, slightly easier. Okay, then we move on to South Korea. Cost of education is less in South Korea as compared to US, Australia, or Canada. Quality education, it depends on some fields. Example, robotics and automation is pretty good in Korea. Again, artificial intelligence is pretty good, but not all fields. Like, for example, if you want to study something like power electronics, there are isolated groups, research groups that are working, but it's not the hub of power electronics. So I hope you understand that. Job opportunities in South Korea, they're good, but again, not up to the mark. There are not ample job opportunities available. ROI, I would say, is not probably as much as the Western countries, but it's still, since the cost of education is less, so that does not matter much. PR immigration is also not that difficult over there. Then we move on to the United Kingdom. The cost of education is also extremely high over there. Quality education is extremely high again. Job opportunities are not as much as the US or Germany, but still they're pretty much okay. Then the ROI in the UK, if you get a good opportunity, then it's I would say it's nominal. Then the PR immigration is pretty much very difficult in the UK. Then let's move on to China. Okay, so the cost of education in China is very less. Quality of education depends on your field, but overall for electronics and electrical, it's pretty good. And job opportunities in China are, there are ample opportunities. The ROI is also uh, pretty good, comparable to that of Japan and Korea. And the PR immigration is very difficult for China. Then we have anywhere in the European Union, which would include the different countries like the Netherlands, Switzerland, or France, Italy, maybe. So, cost of education in Europe is generally not as much as probably the US or Canada or Australia. So, that would be for the European Union. And quality education, again, since the EU is such a big area, there are different isolated research groups, and not every country is good for your field. So again, you have to select your country according to your field. Job opportunities are there are ample opportunities in the European Union. The ROI is also pretty good, and PR immigration is easier in the European Union. And the probably one of the biggest factors is personal preference among all of these. I mean, probably some people might have a biased view about some countries. For example, you might uh, like or dislike some country based on your personal preference or your possibly because of some stereotypes, possibly because of your past experiences, and all of that is perfectly fine. Uh, the personal preference goes into your decision making process, and I think that's understandable enough because you have to spend a lot of time in that place, and perhaps lead you to PR or immigration. So you have to select by personal preference. Next. Uh, Next, I would like to talk a little bit about the funding opportunities, about how you can fund your graduate studies. So, the kinds of funding opportunities available are scholarships, graduate assistantships, teaching assistantships, research assistantships, and part-time work, which could be off or on campus. So, let me first describe the difference between scholarship and an assistantship. So, scholarship is basically free money that you can say rains from heaven. So you get a scholarship by qualifying a particular criteria, and the funding agency gives you funds to study without anything in return. You do not have to pay off that money. You do not have to work to get that money. That is a scholarship. The rest are the assistantships, the three which are graduate teaching and research assistantship. Depending on your role, you can get this is assistantship is a job. It's basically an on-campus job that you have to work with your department or some particular faculty members, and that is how you can secure those assistantships. Uh, Part-time work could be offer on campus. So that could be non-technical work. I mean, that could be working somewhere in the university, for example, in the library, cafeteria, or off campus anywhere in probably some restaurant or a grocery store. All of that is, I think, very uh, acceptable, socially acceptable in those countries because you are working hard to pay off for your own studies. Okay, next big question is how to secure these opportunities. Okay, so the process largely varies depending on country to country, but the main process for scholarships is that there are different agencies that open calls for scholarships. Okay, so how do you know about these calls? There is a very good Facebook group called Scholarship Network. I think for Pakistani students, that is one of the greatest sources there could be for scholarship opportunities. And I would encourage all of you who are interested to join the group of Scholarship Network. And over there, different opportunities are posted, and you can use the search group of the search field of that group to look for scholarships in the country that you're interested in. Okay, talking about the assistantships, these are university specific, and once you've chosen your country and your university, you can get in touch with the university to uh, to ask for different assistantships that may be available, and from there you will get information about these. Okay, and part-time work again, if it's on campus, then obviously the university will facilitate with you on information about it. And if it's off campus, then you have to explore while you're there only. I mean, you cannot. Often it's difficult to look for off-campus work while you're here, and when you actually go there, then looking for off-campus work is a feasible option. Okay. Briefly, very briefly, I'll describe the process of international admissions. So, firstly, you have to choose your specific field of study. And when I say specific, I do not mean that electrical or electronics engineering. That is not specific. You have to dive deep into it for whatever you're interested in. For example, I'm interested in power electronics. Somebody else could be in robotics. So, all of that has to be very specific. Okay, next is decide your preference scale. Would you prefer a fully funded education and compromise on your choice of universities or countries, or would you prefer to target specific universities? This question is very important, and you might uh, have a different preference scale depending on your budget. If your budget is good and you can afford, then you may be able to choose university wise. For example, some people are very ranking centered. They like to go into the best ranked universities in the world. So, but the problem is those universities are very competitive and they offer zero financial assistance to even the brightest of students. So, if you want to go to those universities, then you have to compromise on your budget. Or if you want a fully funded program or you want a financially assisted program, then you have to choose according to your uh, that preference, right? So I hope that is clear. And then, with respect to your preference, you have to start your search. The earlier, the better. So you have to then narrow down your choices of scholarships. I would suggest you to make an Excel sheet of all of the opportunities that you want and organize and plan efficiently. List down all of those scholarships, write comments, write deadlines, give yourself meaningful tasks, and pursue that. Research about your programs of interest. Whatever scholarships that you select, you have to read all of that, read all of the information about that particular program, and gain a lot of knowledge. Next thing that is I found it very insightful, and that was to find alumni of those programs by using LinkedIn. So I contacted a lot of the the alumni of my prospective grad school, and I got a lot of replies and a lot of feedback from people who are alumni of those universities. So I would suggest you to do the same, as it can help you, and it can also uh, help you assess your chances and probably improve your profile according to whatever program you're applying to. Learn the application process and requirements A to Z. When I say A to Z, I mean you have to literally scan for every piece, every bits and pieces of information about the program available. That is how you will master uh, whatever they want, whatever they require in their applicants. Considering all of this, plan your timeline and prepare well in advance. You have to prepare well in advance, and trust me when I say that the world is very competitive. A growing population means a growing number of people, and the higher education institutes are not growing at that pace. So competition is increasing year by year, and so that means uh, the most hardworking people will get in front. And in order to become hardworking, you have to prepare well in advance. There are people around the world competing for those spots, and it is not easy. I would like to just give a few pointers on how to create a strong profile. Some people may misguide you in your bachelor's, especially that good GPA does not matter and GPA is nothing except a number. For higher education, especially, good GPA is a very, very strong indicator. You have to note that good GPA goes a long way into your graduate school application, and along with that, the class rank is also very important. Slash test scores. Okay, so test scores. Just going briefly over that. There are three very common tests that you require for graduate school, and they could be the GRE, the IELTS, or the TOEFL. GRE is basically for maths and English. IELTS and TOEFL are for English. Okay, and again, if I go back one slide, when I talk about the application process and requirements, you have to check all of these requirements, note it down in your Excel file, and plan according to those. So these tests might be a part of those. Okay, so you have to, when I say plan your timeline, you have to plan when you want to take those tests. I would say it's up to you. If it's convenient, you can take those tests in your undergrad, or you can take it after graduation. It's totally up to you. It does not matter much when you take the test, but the scores that matter. Then research experience. This is probably one thing that we all lack in, and I would say to develop this skill is probably one of the most important factors in your graduate school application. How do you do this? You actually contact the local professors in your institution who are writing papers and who are doing some good work. Research experience does not necessarily mean publishing papers. I mean, publishing papers is a part of research experience, but it's not the only thing. Your focus should not be on publishing papers, but it should be on working uh, on a research project, preferably with a very good researcher. That researcher uh, could be in your university, could perhaps be in a different university, but he or she should be from your field of interest, and you should have a little bit of experience of working with them, okay, on a project or something. Okay. Technical skills are again very important, and you can demonstrate this. You can demonstrate this by projects. The more projects you make, the more technical skills you can show off. Extracurricular events. These could be national or international events. They could be science fairs. They could be project fairs. There could be, something that's very popular recently, Formula car groups touring different countries for different events. So all of those things count as a strong a strong pointer for your profile. And needless to say that international events have greater weightage than national or local events. Volunteer leadership qualities, again, a very important indicator of your volunteer and leadership qualities. You could volunteer with local societies, or preferably international ones like IEEE, and that would be a very good thing. Consistency. Again, consistency is very important because the people who look at your profile look for a person who is consistent. And by consistency, I mean you have to have a very good flow in your profile. I mean, you cannot just have a very good GPA in one semester and then a very low GPA in the next. All of those things are come under scrutiny, and you have to have a consistent profile. If not, then you have to explain why it was not consistent. The last word of advice from my side is be well rounded with a strong peak. From whatever little experience I have, and I have talked to a lot of people, also in some admissions committees and alumni of different programs, they all say that you have to be well rounded with a strong peak. What does that mean? You have to have a well rounded profile in everything. I mean, that would be all of those previous things that I mentioned: volunteer leadership, extracurricular, technical skills, research experience, good GPA and class rank. The well rounded, the better. Okay. And with a strong peak, when I say a strong peak, I say that you have to have one interest area that you can demonstrate that this is my area and this is where I want to work in, and I have considerable experience in that area. For example, let me give you let's say a person is interested in power electronics. Okay, so his profile should reflect that he is a well-rounded applicant, and uh, he has demonstrated experience and skills in all of those previous things that I mentioned. and he has a strong peak in the area of power electronics. He has worked on projects. He or she has worked on projects in power electronics. Uh, they have some experience related to research, and preferably they have a paper in power electronics. So that makes a well-rounded profile with a strong peak. And if you are able to achieve this well-rounded profile with a strong peak, then your chances of any scholarship or any admission is very, very high. And the stronger the profile, the less you have to pay, and the more your chances are of getting. Okay, so that concludes this presentation, and I'm sorry for taking a lot of time. But if there are any questions, I would say that you can note down your questions in the chat section that we have in this WebEx webinar, and we will address those questions towards the end of the webinar after Rameez is done with the professional section. Uh, Over to the hosts, Fabiha and Omar. Please continue for the next Rameez section.
Thank you very much, Haris bhai. It was really nice to hear from you. Now we'll hand over the control to Mr. Rameez. Omar, can you please make him the presenter?
Hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me share my screen first.
Rameez, is there any issue in sharing the screen?
Okay, so I think Rameez has a connection issue. Meanwhile, if there are any questions from the previous presentation that I gave about the higher education, if there are any questions or you want to discuss anything, please feel free to discuss until Rameez has his issues resolved.
We are open to questions from the audience. Does anyone like to ask? You can unmute your mics and present your questions. Okay, Harsh bhai, I would like to ask a question. आपने इतनी सारी countries के बारे में हमें बताया था, so our best country to pursue higher education.
Um, that's a very good question, but again, there are a lot of factors, as I mentioned, that go into your choice of your destination country. आपके जो vision है, that goes a long way into deciding about your destination country. तो मैं एक एग्जांपल के तौर पर मैं अपना बता I have decided to choose USA for my graduate studies और US चूज करने का मेरा जो मकसद है वो ये है कि वहाँ पे अपॉर्चुनिटीज बहुत ज़्यादा हैं. इट्स कॉल्ड द लैंड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज फॉर अ रीज़न. जितनी भी बड़ी बड़ी कंपनीज हैं, दे आर वर्किंग इन टेक्नोलॉजी एंड इंजीनियरिंग and they operate from Silicon Valley. Why they operate from Silicon Valley? Because the US is like it's like a talent magnet, sucking all of the talent from the world. तो जो भी सारे ज़्यादातर जो talented लोग होते हैं, they prefer to go to the US because the ROI is very high. When I talk about ROI, it is your salary or the other benefit that you can get. Standard of living is very high, and after you're done with your graduation, there are a lot of opportunities. और मेरी personal preference, जैसा कि मैंने कहा, कि that goes into your decision making process. और personal preference, past experiences मेरे काफ़ी अच्छे हैं. So that is why I chose the US for my studies. लेकिन इसका हरगिज़ ये मतलब नहीं है कि किसी और के लिए US ही एक अच्छी डेस्टिनेशन है. There are a lot of other factors, जैसा कि मैंने बताया, cost of education है, बाकी PR immigration, वो सारी चीज़ें they go into your decision making process. और Germany is, I would say, is a very good compromise between the cost, ROI, and the PR immigration. So that is uh, totally dependent on the student who is pursuing. So I think Rameez is back, and we should allow him to.
Hello, everyone. Is my screen visible? Sorry, my internet got disconnected.
No, it's okay. We can hear you.
Okay, so can you see my screen as well?
Yes, Rameez, we can see.
Okay, thanks to it. Okay, so the topic of our today's talk is life beyond graduation, industry and job. So before continuing into topic, I will give you a brief bio of mine. So I have been graduated from Science and Technology in 2019. I have volunteered for IEEE for like 4 years. I have been into student branches, like Karachi section, SEC committee, and now I am chair for IEEE Young Professionals Affinity Group. I am working as a software engineer in Engr. So let us continue with that. टॉपिक। ओके, सो फेसेस टुवर्ड्स योर फर्स्ट जॉब। आपकी फर्स्ट जॉब के अंदर बेसिकली अगर आप देखें तो जिन फेसेस से आपको जाके गुजरना पड़ता है, दे आर लाइक, अगर उनको आप समराइज करें, सो यू कैन सी ये कुछ फेसेस हैं जिनको आपको गुजरते हुए जॉब तक जाना पड़ता है, जिसके अंदर सबसे पहले आपके पास है डेवलपिंग स्किल्स, सेकंड इज मेकिंग कनेक्शन, उसके बाद बीइंग बेस्ट कैंडिडेट, ताकि आपको जॉब बाकी के मुकाबले आपके प्रेफरेंस हो आपके क्रिएटर की। उसके अलावा उसके बाद होते हैं आपको जॉब हासिल करना, एंड जॉब हासिल करने के बाद फिर दो चीज़ें मजीद आपको करनी पड़ती हैं, जिनमें एक है कीप लर्निंग और finding better opportunities. So I will discuss all of these in details. So let's dig into developing skills. So there is a one mantra, TNT, today not tomorrow. हमारी कोशिश ये होती है कि हम अपने स्टूडेंट लाइफ के अंदर जो है वो एजुकेशन के ऊपर इतना फोकस्ड होते हैं कि हम स्किल्स डेवलप नहीं कर रहे होते। इट्स लाइक ओके, वी आर गेटिंग गुड जीपीए, वी आर गुड इन स्टडीज, बट स्टडीज के अलावा यू हैव टू डेवलप स्किल्स एज वेल। सो इट्स लाइक जानना एक अलग चीज़ है और उस चीज़ को अप्लाई करना एक अलग चीज़ है। सो आप सिर्फ नॉलेज हासिल ना कर लें, बल्कि उस नॉलेज को यूटिलाइज कैसे करना है, ये चीज़ आना स्किल कहलाती है। सो स्किल्स आपके अंदर होनी ज़रूरी हैं। उसके अलावा सेकंड चीज़ जो है वो ये है कि बेस्ट सूटेड स्किल्स क्या है मार्केट के अंदर डिमांडेड इस टाइम पे, उनकी तरफ आप जाएँ। इट्स लाइक ओके, सो ग्राफिक डिज़ाइनर के फॉर एग्जांपल, आई एम जस्ट गिविंग एग्जांपल, मार्केट के अंदर इस टाइम पे फूड डिलीवरी वाले बिज़नेस की बहुत ज़्यादा डिमांड है। सो अगर आप जस्ट इन केस आप कोई फाइनल ईयर प्रोजेक्ट बना रहे हैं या कुछ ऐसी चीज़ बना रहे हैं, अगर मैं कंप्यूटर साइंस या इस तरह कंप्यूटर साइंस या सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग की बात करूँ, सो उसके अंदर अगर आप इस तरह के प्रोजेक्ट्स पे काम करते हैं तो ऑब्वियसली बात है आपके अंदर स्किल्स भी जो है वो उस तरह की डेवलप हो रही होंगी। सो इस वजह से आप देखें कि मार्केट में इस वक्त नीडेड क्या है, आगे आने वाले 5-6 साल के अंदर जब आप ग्रेजुएट होकर बाहर निकलते हैं यूनिवर्सिटी से, तो क्या चीज़ होगी जिसकी डिमांड होगी। इस वक्त जो है जिस तरह एआई और मशीन लर्निंग का दौर है, तो अगर आप इस तरह की चीज़ों की स्किल्स हासिल करें तो ऑब्वियसली बात है वो आपको जो है वो बहुत फ़ायदा दे रही होंगी नियर फ्यूचर। सो मार्केट को पहले देखा जाए, फिर उसके बाद स्किल्स जो है वो स्टार्ट की जाए। जस्ट इन केस अगर मैं एग्जांपल दूँ तो फॉर एग्जांपल मोबाइल डेवलपमेंट इस टाइम पे आजकल जो चीज़ें काफ़ी ऑटोमेट हो रही हैं, तो हो सकता है कल को जो है मैं एक वेबसाइट पे जाऊँ, वहाँ ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप करूँ एंड मेरी मोबाइल ऐप्स डेवलप हो जाए। सो मे बी मुझे मोबाइल डेवलपर की नीड नहीं होगी, एआई मेरी मोबाइल एप्लीकेशन खुद बना रही होगी, कोड कर रही। सो इस तरह की चीज़ें हैं जो लाइक कुछ फील्ड्स हैं जो बहुत तेज़ी से जो है वो पुरानी होती जा रही हैं और नई फील्ड्स आती जा रही हैं। सो हमारा फोकस जो है वो नई फील्ड्स की करो और उसी से रिलेटेड स्किल्स जो है वो हम डेवलप कर रहे हो। उसके बाद आती है तीसरी चीज़ सेल्फ लर्निंग। अच्छा देखें, जिस तरह का आजकल का दौर है, आजकल जो है वो टाइम बहुत तेज़ी से गुजर रहा है और चीज़ें जो है बहुत जल्दी नई से नई आती जा रही हैं। टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे पास जो है बहुत जल्दी अपग्रेड हो रही है। 5G आ रहा है, मशीन लर्निंग आ रही है, डिफरेंट चीज़ें आ रही हैं। सो हम ये नहीं कर सकते कि हमने यूनिवर्सिटी में जो सीख लिया यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर, हम समझें कि हम सिर्फ वही हमने सीखा है तो अब उसी के बेसिस पे हमें जॉब मिल जाएगी और हम वही काम करते रहेंगे। नो, कल को क्या होगा, कल को ये होगा कि नई चीज़ आ जाएगी तो आपको बैठ के खुद नई चीज़ सीखनी होगी, तब यूनिवर्सिटी नहीं होगी, आप ग्रेजुएट हो चुके होंगे। तो अगर आप यूनिवर्सिटी की लाइफ से ही सेल्फ लर्निंग की आदत डाल लेंगे तो आपको आगे मुश्किल नहीं होगी और आपकी जो जॉब करियर है उसके अंदर वो चीज़ बहुत फ़ायदेमंद होगी। सो इसलिए सेल्फ लर्निंग की आदत डालना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी लाइफ के अंदर स्किल्स डेवलप करने के लिए। उसके बाद चीज़ आती है बी डाइवर्स। अब इससे क्या मुराद है, इससे मुराद ये फॉर एग्जांपल आप किसी एक फील्ड में हैं, तो जस्ट उसी फील्ड के अंदर फोकस्ड होके चीज़ें नहीं, स्किल्स नहीं सीख रहे हो, बल्कि उसके अलावा भी आपके पास स्किल्स आते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल जस्ट इन केस अगर मैं एक सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर हूँ, सो इट डजंट मीन कि मैं आर्डिनो जो है वो उसके बेस पे एक प्रोजेक्ट नहीं बना सकता। अगर मैं आर्डिनो का प्रोजेक्ट भी बना सकता हूँ और सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर होते हुए, सो इट्स लाइक मैं डाइवर्स हूँ। अगर मैं डिज़ाइनिंग भी कर सकता हूँ एक सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर होते हुए, तो इट मीन्स मैं डाइवर्स हूँ। सो ये है कि आपके जो है स्किल्स डाइवर्स होनी चाहिए, किसी एक जगह पे फोकस ना हो, बल्कि आपको हर चीज़ कुछ ना कुछ आती हो। जितनी ज़्यादा आपको चीज़ें ज़्यादा आती होंगी उतना ज़्यादा आपके लिए बेटर होगा जॉब हासिल करने का। सो लेट्स मूव टू नेक्स्ट फेस, मेकिंग कनेक्शंस। अच्छा देखिए, कनेक्शन जो है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं आपकी जॉब हासिल करने के लिए। वो कैसे? वो ऐसे कि फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप देखें तो लिंक्डइन एक नेटवर्क है, तो वहाँ क्या हो रहा है, वहाँ जस्ट आप कनेक्शंस बनाते हैं और कनेक्शंस की बेसिस के ऊपर आपको कोई ना कोई हो सकता है बेटर अपॉर्चुनिटी नज़र आ जाए। सो इसके अलावा और कनेक्शंस क्या हो सकते हैं? कनेक्शन हो सकते हैं जिस तरह यहाँ मेंशन होगा, एंगेज विद योर सीनियर्स। किसी सीनियर की जॉब ऑलरेडी लगी हुई है एंड जहाँ वो काम कर रहे हैं वहाँ कोई बंदा रिक्वायर्ड है, अगर आपकी एंगेजमेंट अपने सीनियर्स के साथ होगी तो हो सकता है वो आपको रेफर कर रहा होगा वहाँ पे, या वो आपको बता रहा होगा यार ये अपॉर्चुनिटी है, इसको जो है आप अप्लाई करो। सो अपने सीनियर्स के साथ एंगेज कर रखना जो है वो अपने आप को बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है यूनिवर्सिटी लाइफ के अंदर, ताकि जब वो पास आउट हो जाए और उनकी जॉब लगी हो और आपका टाइम आ रहा हो तो वो आपको हेल्प आउट कर रहे हैं। उसके अलावा फिर हमारे पास जो है प्लेटफॉर्म्स हैं जैसे IEEE है। सो IEEE के अगर आप इवेंट्स के अंदर ज्वाइन करते हो, उसके अलावा वॉलंटियर करते हो, तो इससे फ़ायदा ये होता है आप नए लोगों का, आपको जो है वो नए लोग मिलने का मौका मिलता है नए लोगों से। सो उससे ये होता है कि ऑब्वियस सी बात है आपके कनेक्शंस बनते हैं। हो सकता है कोई बंदा है, आप अपना एक बिजनेस कार्ड साथ रखें जब भी आप IEEE के इवेंट्स में जा रहे हो, बेशक वो IEEE से रिलेटेड हो। अगर आप फॉर एग्जाम्पल अपने स्टूडेंट ब्रांच के अंदर जा रहे हैं तो उसका आप बिजनेस कार्ड बनवा लें एंड वो साथ रखें, उनके साथ वो एक्सचेंज कर लें। इससे क्या होगा कि हो सकता है जब उसमें मेंशन आपने किया हो अपना ईमेल वगैरह, तो वो फिर आपसे कनेक्ट हो जाएं और फिर आपको अपॉर्चुनिटी आए तो वो आपके साथ शेयर कर रहे हैं। सो ये चीज़ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है कनेक्शन बनाना। उसके अलावा फिर आपके पास प्लेटफॉर्म्स हैं जैसे लिंक्डइन हो गया या IEEE कोलैबोरेट हो गया, इनको यूज़ करें। इनसे भी आपको बहुत फ़ायदा मिलेगा। अगर आप फॉर एग्जांपल इंटरनेशनल मार्केट के अंदर जॉब सर्च कर रहे हैं तो IEEE कोलैबोरेट जो है वो बहुत बेटर है। आप इंटरनेशनली जो है वो लोगों के साथ कनेक्ट हो सकते हैं IEEE से रिलेटेड, और इंजीनियरिंग की फील्ड हो गई या कंप्यूटर साइंस की फील्ड हो गई, दोनों के अंदर ये है कि आपको बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ मिल सकती हैं। और अगर आप लोकल मार्केट में काम करना चाह रहे हैं तो दैट इज़ लिंक्डइन। लिंक्डइन आपको जो है बहुत अच्छे से लोकल मार्केट के अंदर कनेक्ट करने में आपको मदद कर सकता है। तो ये दोनों प्लेटफॉर्म पे आप एक्टिवली जो है वो अवेलेबल हो और इसको यूज़ करें। इट्स लाइक जितने ज़्यादा आप कनेक्शंस बना सकें लिंक्डइन और IEEE कोलैबोरेट में, उतने ज़्यादा कनेक्शन बनाएं। सो ये कुछ चीज़ होती है जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है अपनी जॉब हासिल करने के लिए। उसके बाद फिर तीसरा फेस आता है बीइंग बेस्ट कैंडिडेट एंड बैगिंग द जॉब। अब इससे क्या मुराद है? इससे मुराद ये है, फॉर एग्जांपल जस्ट आप इमेजिन करें कि आप एक रिक्रूटर हैं और आपके पास 500 सीवियाँ आ रही हैं। सो उन 500 सीवीज़ के अंदर आप